Alrighty, Cherub. So today we're going to be continuing in Africa, and today we're going to be talking about royal symbols and what they look like and how they advertise the power of the ruler. Okay? So again, keep these big themes in mind. Power, the kingship, that's going to become very important today. Ceremony, the role of the ancestors. Gender roles and differences, we're going to see that today as well. And especially the head is the seat of knowledge. So we're going to be seeing a bunch of these themes here today. You want to make sure that you take your quiz on the masks from last time. Make sure you do that. Today we've got four pieces to talk about. We've got a veranda post, a wall plaque, a statue, and a stool. All right, so we're going to be starting up here in Benin and Nigeria. We're going to be talking about the Edo peoples. Okay, now this is one of many wall plaques that come from Benin and Benin City. All right, you can see that it figures the ruler, the king. He's hierarchically scaled. He's larger than the other figures, and they're supporting him. They're holding up his arms. You can see there are animal heads in the background. And you can see that the head, especially the king, is enlarged, that it represents that he is the head, the seat of knowledge of the kingdom. Okay, that while the head is important as the seat of knowledge, the king's head, he is the head of the kingdom. All right, you can see the flower forms, these cruciforms, in the background of the plaque. Now, this is cast bronze, and it's a very sophisticated technique in that you have a lot of negative space happening here in this casting. This is extremely advanced metallurgy that produced this plaque. There are a bunch of plaques. This isn't the only one. So in the 19th century, Benin City was the capital of a vast kingdom, and it was a massive, massive city. And it was surrounded by this earthwork wall, the largest on the continent of Africa. It was enormous. Okay, this truly spectacular city. They ran afoul of the British ambitions for the continent, and the British, their goals to make money, and they razed the city. They completely destroyed it. And in doing so, the British raided all of their goods. Now, the Oba plaques, the Oba is the king, okay? The Oba plaques hung on pillars in the palace, and you can see them here laid out on the ground, and they were in order, and they detailed the history of, they created a lineage and a genealogy of the rulers of the Edo peoples, and the British, in dismantling them, didn't bother to, well, they wiped out that knowledge. They brought them back to England. Some were housed in the British Museum, and some were sold to private collectors. All right. Here is a picture of the living Oba. All right. You can see that he is wearing fire coral, which is from the Mediterranean. It's traded from the Mediterranean. There's legends about how the first Oba obtained fire coral, and it's very difficult to get, and he, is the only guy who is wearing so much of that. But you can see that he's wearing this fire coral in some of these plaques. So again, you're seeing him riding on a horse, and the only person who can ride a horse in Edo society is the Oba, and he's being shielded. These are shields actually covering. They're holding up over his head, and again, his arms are being held aloft. That cruciform pattern that comes from trade with the Portuguese several centuries earlier. Now, again, this was very, very sophisticated metal work, and it was assumed by the British that such work was impossible for indigenous Africans to figure out on their own, and therefore must have been taught to them by the Greeks, which is bogus. Okay, complete, because having an African society that produced civilization, actual artworks, on such a sophisticated level, denied them their ability to say that these people were barbaric. Okay, so they wiped out their art and took it all back. Go ahead and give this one a watch, and it's going to show you a bunch of the plaques held in the British Museum. Okay, so the Oba plaques, again, they have that hierarchical scaling, and they emphasize the head as the Oba is the great head of the people, and it is a high relief with lots of negative space. They would have decorated the walls of the palace, and this palace was enormous, okay, with these wooden pillars that held up this vast ceiling. And it shows different aspects of the court life in Edo culture and Benin culture, okay, with the symbols of rank emphasized. Again, that head is enlarged, and the head is the seat of knowledge, and the king is the head of the people. There were over 900 plaques produced, and again, they're about 18 inches tall. And the first Oba was a direct descendant of the legendary founder of their dynasty. Okay. So this is the Oba plaques of the Edo peoples of Benin and Nigeria. All right. Now we're moving on. And to Ghana, the Ashanti people. Now, the Ashanti people, Ghana was formerly known as the Gold Coast. Right next to it is the Ivory Coast, the Côte d'Ivoire. But Ghana used to be known colonially as the Gold Coast, and for good reason. The Ashanti people were rich; they were swimming in gold. Okay, and gold held spiritual significance for them. Now, they're going to be the Ashanti are going to rule over a vast territory, and they're going to have a very rich cultural life. Okay. Now, the thing that we're looking at here is a stool. Okay, but it's on its side. So this thing right here is the stool, and it's sitting on its side, and it's surrounded by these gold ornaments as well as bells, and it's sitting on a European style chair. All right, this is not the throne. This is not the throne. This is Sika Kofi, the golden stool. Now, it was said that the first king of the Ashanti, the first king who went conquering his neighbors, his priest conjured the golden stool as a way to unify the people, something that they could all rally behind. And it fell from the sky, and he used his magics, and it fell from the sky. And since that time, it is said to have holds the soul of the Ashanti people, and should the golden stool cease to exist, the Ashanti people would also cease to exist. If it were ever destroyed or captured, the Ashanti people themselves would cease to exist. So much of their cultural identity is tied up with this chair. Okay? Now, it's on its side, and for a very, very specific reason. You can't sit on it. The king does not sit on it. It is not a throne. It is the soul of the nation. Okay, here's another view of it. It is very rarely seen, so pictures of it are actually kind of hard to come by. It has the bells attached to it so that it could be warn of danger, impending danger. All right. When the king is crowned, he is held over the throne. Excuse me, not the throne. Excuse me, the Sika Dwa Kofi. He's held over it, but he's not. His backside does not touch it. He does not sit on it, ever. So Ashanti stools are actually, let me skip ahead here just a second. Now the stools, here are examples of stools that you can see, and they each have their own characteristics, they each have their own style, and each person has their own stool. Okay, these are just wood stools, and each person gets their own, and they're not shared because the stool absorbs your essence as you sit in it. Okay, it absorbs your soul as you sit in it. And so when you get up and walk away, you turn the stool on its side so someone else doesn't sit on it. Okay, so that it's known, hey, this is, nope, that's not your chair, that's my chair. Okay, for that reason, Sika Dwa Kofi is never sat on, not even by the king. It's above the king. It's more important than the king. So it sits on its own European style chair. So again, the symbolism here is that it is more important than the nations of Europe. Okay. Now just check out this picture. Now here's the king of the Ashanti, and you can see all the gold that is here in this image, that there again, just there's a ton of gold because it is culturally significant. Okay, that it has spiritual value to it. It's not just money, that it has spiritual value as well. In the colonial period, the British tried to take the stool, and an officer in the British Army actually tried to sit on it, which ignited the War of the Golden Stool. Okay, where the Ashanti fought tooth and nail against the British for this insult to their culture. Okay, yeah. So again, the king is usually the person to touch it. Almost no one else gets to touch it. It is very, very sacred. Okay. So the famous people of Ashanti descent, Harriet Tubman and Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations. Okay. It's always on its side, never put on the ground. Again, the new king is raised over the stool and carried to the king on a pillow, and only he's going to touch it. People can own their own stools, and like I said, they absorb your essence, and they're turned on your side to prevent other people from sitting on it. Again, this was conjured from the sky by the priest of the Congar king, Ose Tutu, all right? And the War of the Golden Stool happened at the beginning of the 20th century in 1900. It is covered in gold, and it is a wood stool. And again, it's rarely seen, and it's only brought out for special occasions. All right. So that is Sika Dwa Kofi, the golden stool of the Ashanti people of Ghana. Now we're going to head down back to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, to the Kuba people. Now, the Kuba people are going to begin in about the 1700s to create the Ndop figure. The Ndop figure is a portrait of the king. Now, it's not like the Emblo mask that we saw previously. The Ndop is not supposed to be a portrait, a physical likeness of the king, but rather his soul. So here we're getting, again, an enlarged head because the king is the head of knowledge, is the head of the nation. Okay. So the emphasis on the head. His eyes closed, and again, a very serene look on his face. He is meant to be idealized and beautified. Right? It is rubbed with oils to prevent it from being eaten into or bored into by insects. The Ndop is wearing a crown on his head. Right? And the thing here at the front, this is unique to each. Again, the features of each king are going to be, from statue to statue, they're going to be relatively similar. Okay, because again, they're idealized. But what is individualized is this feature here at the front, and it's called the e-bowl. And each king is going to come up with their own pattern, their own e-bowl, which gets replicated in fabrics and in beadwork across the country so that it becomes their reign, their own individual style, right? The Ndop, the first several Ndop figures were created by one artist, and for previous kings, and then after that, they started to be created by the royal artisan in residence at the time of the rule of the king. So again, we've got the Ndop figure. Now this is by King Mishe Mashiang Maembul. Okay, but you can call it the Ndop figure, and that's fine. 1760 wood. Now, when I got the chance to go to the Utah Museum of Fine Arts and take a look again at some of the figures that they had, and it's really interesting when they opened up the cabinet to remove the figures so that we could look at them, and they did have an Ndop figure there, and it's weird to think of a piece of art having a smell, but this certainly did have a smell, like this cabinet of these wood objects that are rubbed in these oils to protect them. They absolutely had this smell associated with them, and it was this very rich, aromatic smell of these woods. It was just this really, really unique experience I'm glad I got to have. Okay, so here is a portrait, or excuse me, a photograph of the Ndop, of the king of the Kuba people, and you can see that the Kuba. There is a visual hierarchy associated with them, and so the more stuff that you accumulate and wear on your person, the more important you are. And so the king is the guy with the most stuff. So there's this visual language, this visual hierarchy, which is really, really interesting here in the Kuba people. So you can see on these different figures, we've got a different e-bowl for each statue. So you can see that there are similarities for the faces. Again, that enlarged head for all of them. Now, their eyes are meant to look like cowrie shells, and for the Kuba, the cowrie shell is currency. It's money. And so by depicting them here, and you can see it a little bit better on this one, by depicting the eyes as cowrie shells, they're showing you that the king is the richest guy around. And so he's so rich that he's actually like, he would have cowrie shells ground up and pulverized, and he would eat them with his meals, which is just kind of funny. That's like the president eating money to show how fancy he is. Okay. And so that's what the eyes are doing. So they are closed, but they are also meant to resemble the cowrie shell to show his fabulous wealth. All right. So these are the Ndop figures of the Kuba. Here's another view of the Kuba. Excuse me, of the Kuba king. Look at his toes even are separated by this beadwork, this beaded suit. He holds that spear. So elaborate. Okay. Now, this is Nigeria. Okay, so Nigeria is over here. I need to fix that here in my presentation, in my slide. Nigeria is over here. And our last piece is the Veranda Post of the enthroned king and his wife. And it is created by the Yoruba people of Nigeria. Nigeria, again, not all of these nations have different groups and different peoples. This is by the Yoruba people. And the artist's name is Olowe of Ise. Olowe of Ise has a specific style, and we know that we can identify pieces of his by his style. So he's going to create these pieces with a lot of negative space, and they come out from the capital. So again, this is going to be a column. This is a column used to hold up a porch. Here we go. So you can see here it is. All right, holding up the porch, and it's going to, the Yoruba are going to have their courtyards. The palace kind of revolve around this courtyard, okay, much like the Romans are going to do. And we've got this where you've got the figure that's extending way past the capital. Okay, that's Olowe of Ise who's doing that. You can see some of these other ones don't really do that, but like this guy does and this guy does. As you can tell, that's Olowe of Ise who's doing that. Now, if we take a look at this, you can see the king seated, and behind him is his wife. So what this is doing, and the king is much smaller than his wife. So what this is doing is paying homage to spiritual power, to covert power. The king wields overt political power. He's the guy in charge. But what this Veranda Post is doing is paying homage to the fact that there behind every good man is a better woman. Okay? That she's the one that has his ear, that she's the covert power behind the throne. And older women in Yoruba society are going to be called respectfully our mother. All right. And the spirit of our mother is always identified as a bird. All right. So the bird is always going to be on the crown. It's the female power. Okay. The bird represents the female power of the kingdom. All right. And so that's always going to be on the crown. Now, the crown itself that the Yoruba king wears is packed with medicine. It's packed with things, with stuff to influence his brain and give him wisdom. Not his physical brain, but his spiritual brain. Okay? And when you look at the Yoruba king, and here's an example of the Yoruba king in his full regalia, his face is veiled so that you see the office of kingship rather than the individual being. All right. And the Utah Museum of Fine Arts has a Yoruba crown. So you can see there is the bird. There's my reflection. And again, inside would be packed with medicine, with stuff to influence and grant him wisdom, to influence his spiritual brain and give him wisdom. All right. So again, Olowe of Ise creates this veranda post, honoring the power of the queen, of the female power that influences the overt power of the king. And down below, we're having a musician and as well as a trickster. All right. Okay. So we've got the flute player is the trickster, and we've got the junior wife. Okay. The wife, I forgot to mention this, she's the one that crowns him during his coronation. So again, the Yoruba absolutely pay homage to the role of female power and influence in the within the kingdom. And those are our pieces for today. Those are the royal pieces that deal with, or in Africa that we're seeing. So just by way of review, we've got the Great Zimbabwe by the Shona people. We've got the Great Mosque at Djenne in Mali. We've got Sika Kofi of the Ashanti people in Ghana. We've got the Oba Plaque by the Edo peoples of Benin and Nigeria. We've got the Bundu mask by the Mende people, created by the Sand Society in Sierra Leone and Liberia. We've got the Pwo mask by the Chokwe in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We've got the Emblo mask made by the Baoulé people of the Côte d'Ivoire. We've got the Aka elephant mask made by the Bamileke of Cameroon. We've got the Veranda Post made by the Yoruba people, and specifically the artist Oluwe Avise, whose name we know. And we've got the Ndop figure, the portrait of the king of the Kuba people, also in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So again, say the names out loud as you review, and that'll help stick. All right, and that is our lecture for today. Make sure you take your quiz for last time's pieces, and we'll see you next time.